trailing by 2 possessions. Scadaboo's going to try to throw it downfield, and it is caught, and into the end zone goes Malik McClain. Cam Scadaboo.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
To stay alive, can they hook 'em? Touchdown, Matthew Golden!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Scadaboo wrapped up, sent back, and then goes forward. Is he in? Yes!
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Take it to Judkins again, and there is Smith roaming free, breaks a tackle. Ohio State strikes quickly from 45 yards.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Off the fake down the middle. Caught in stride. Abuka touchdown. Buckeyes on fire.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
Well, we're back in the studio. Glad to be here. Hope you had a great run during the holiday season. And Happy New Year from 365 Sports. I'm David Smoke with Paul Catalina and Craig Smoke. Garrett Ross is running the mothership. Jack McKenzie here today. Both of them were also in Houston covering the Texas Bowl, which was quite the game. LSU beating Baylor. We'll get to that a little bit later on because there's a lot to get to when it comes to the college football playoff, including a game that's about to kick off in New Orleans after the tragedy overnight on New Year's Eve and New Year's morning with the game happening, Georgia and Notre Dame. All right, college football playoff, games, scores, opinions, and more. Texas and Arizona State. Wow, what a great football game. Arizona State had a chance, but Texas converts an overtime on a 4th and 12. And so many little nuggets and stats to get into with this game. But what a run from Kenny Dillingham, and what a huge win for Sarkisian and the favored Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, I mean, that 4th and 13 blitz, I mean, I think Kenny Dillingham's going to wake up in the middle of the night for years and go like, that just didn't work. Like, I don't blame them for trying to get Quinn Ewers rattled. The problem is that Quinn Ewers, I know he's not everything that Texas fans want him to be, but he is absolutely a veteran quarterback, and he made the right call, audibled out of it, and then the 2 defensive backs just got toasted by Matthew Golden, and that kind of ended that. So it was great. I think I love the 12-team playoff. The flaws I see in it, to me, are mostly minor, and the pushback you see from the other side of it is people who don't like sharing the spotlight and are brand elitists or conference elitists. Otherwise, like, Arizona State proved that they belong. You play 4-quarter games. I know that, people, they jumped out to this, jumped out to that. Man,
it doesn't matter.
It's been great. You play 4 quarters. Cam Scadaboo is the frickin' man. And I don't want to just say frickin' because it doesn't give him enough credit. He is amazing.
Arizona State didn't need to prove anything, but I guess for some they did, just like maybe Oregon didn't or others didn't in the playoffs so far. As we get to one more game and then we'll have the semifinals. Craig, I thought it was a phenomenal game. I did think there was a concern if Texas would jump out early, and they did, but Arizona State just kept on chipping away.
Yeah, I think the future, the present, is really bright for Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils. I know they're hanging their heads just because that's what you do in a defeat, but they have little reason to really hang their heads for too long because they had a hell of a season. They had a hell of a performance, and yeah, just one play here, one play there, and that game sees them moving on into the semifinals of the college football playoff, which is definitely of note because I saw plenty of prognosticators, much like after the first round when everybody was bitching and moaning about the fact that we had to watch these college football games that weren't ultra competitive and like fantasy booked to where it came down to a final field goal and whatever else people were complaining about. We got an all-time classic of a game between Arizona State and Texas, and you know what? If we listen to those same people, Arizona State had no shot in that game. You listen to the folks out in Vegas, Arizona State, 3-score underdogs, 2-touchdown, bare minimum underdogs in that game. And it's sort of why you play the game. And, yeah, there's going to be games where you line up and there are going to be blowouts, but every once in a while you're going to have a classic. You're going to have a team that pulls the unexpected, and Arizona State damn near and should have done that yesterday. That's the thing that really leaves you walking away with a bad taste in your mouth is the fact that they should have, could have, would have won that game. And I know on the same side of the coin, you know, Texas can say, well, hey, if this hadn't happened or that hadn't happened, then we win that game easily. We coast away and we're not, you know, sweating it out in overtime. But, you know, without getting too into the mud, congrats to Texas. That was a hell of a win. They've had, you know, 2 good wins now in the playoff, and they move on into the Final Four. And I think Ohio State's going to be an incredibly tough matchup, but I think they'll be an incredibly tough matchup for Ohio State. Very interested in that game. That ought to be a barn burner and one hell of a matchup. But for Arizona State, for all the talk about the Big 12 and a lack of respect, that's almost become like trendy to just like complain about your status and how you're disrespected and you're overlooked. And like a lot of times there are teams in this league that are, and you do need to stand up and speak up for yourself. But you can talk the talk all you want to. Eventually you got to walk the walk. And I think that despite that game not finishing the way you wanted it to, Arizona State went and walked the effing walk yesterday. And they proved that they belonged. They proved that they were a right choice. They proved that they were deserving of their spot in the playoff. They proved that the Big 12 has a team that compete. And they proved that, you know, they're a program that people need to pay note of now moving forward.
Well,
so, yeah, that was a hell of a game.
Well, while other conferences wanted more than just 2 or maybe 3, the Big 12, if you look at least what's happened throughout the bowl games and the playoffs, you look at what BYU or Iowa State could have at least been included. But you know what? It's over. You now move on. There are 5 teams left. If Notre Dame beats Georgia, none of the 4 top seeds or conference champions will be a part of the semifinals. And that's kind of magical in a way. But in the end, no matter what happens today between in that game going on with the Sugar Bowl, Georgia and Notre Dame, in the end, guess who you have? You have the Blue Bloods. You have the names, Ohio State and Texas and either Notre Dame or Georgia. And, of course, on the other end of it, you still have Penn State. So it's going to be fun, those semifinal games that come up in a week and a half. Here's a couple of stats from that Texas and Arizona State game that I thought, I literally, early on, I was doing some things around my desk at the where I live, and then even doing laundry. And I was like, okay, 17-3, 17-5, the snap that Ewers fortunately had the ball pop back into his hands after the hit on Wisner. But what a game. Quinn Ewers. There are times when he just kind of like, where is he? He was brilliant. In clutch time, think players, not plays. In the last 5 minutes of regulation and double overtime, Quinn Ewers was 12 of 15, including a 2-point conversion, 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. 9 of the 15 targets were thrown to either Gunnar Helm, the tight end, who scored what proved to be the game-winning touchdown, or Matthew Golden, who was absolutely golden. He was almost uncoverable for Arizona State. Also, the UT rushing game, which has been so dynamic and gashed Clemson, they struggled. How about this? They did not generate one play in the running game of 10 yards or more. Not one. They even did thump Georgia a couple of times in doing this. They had a couple of those. It's the first time. How about Texas? 30 carries, 53 yards for less than 2 yards a pop, while Arizona State ran for 214. It wasn't easy early for them at 4 yards. They just kept doing what they do.
Yeah, but Arizona State's defense was, they got gashed. They got popped in that first drive for 2 long pass plays. Then they gave up the punt return, which is not on the defense. That's on the special teams, which I think Kenny Dillingham will also keep him up at night. But after that, they locked it down until until it got late, and then they were fantastic. And so UT's, they've shown they're not perfect. I think, though, you go in looking ahead to what Texas can do and what Ohio State's been doing, and we'll talk about that game in a second. I think these are the 2 best teams in the country, player-for-player, roster-wise, that are playing in the semifinals, in my opinion, that we got coming up.
Yeah, I think Texas' offensive line's got to be a bit of a concern right now. That certainly plays into it, just the injury and health status of their front is something you definitely have eyes locked in on, looking at next week and the matchup eventually with Ohio State. But, we'll see. There's a lot of talent still on that roster, but certainly bottled up a bit more than maybe you anticipated, or health playing a bit more of an impact than maybe you suspected against Arizona State. But I think maybe some of those expectations were just that expectations were so low for Arizona State as well, right? Because I don't think people anticipated much of what you saw yesterday, because I don't think you anticipated that Cam Scatterbo was going to be able to do much if he got locked in on against this Texas defense, and he was a national star by the end of that game. And it's just unfortunate that kind of a spotlight wasn't shown on him earlier. But I understand, because they did not have a lot of preseason hype, and because the spotlight didn't really turn their direction until the last couple of weeks of the regular season, really. He did not become this national phenomenon until yesterday. So, he deserves a lot of credit, but that was something I didn't think was necessarily going to go the way of Arizona State that did. But Texas, despite the struggle to run the ball, or maybe this not going their way or that going their way, they did enough to win the game, and that's what they've done throughout the year for the most part, except for against Georgia. When they haven't played well, they still have guys that step up. Matthew Golden, where's he? He's been around, but hell of a time, young man, to pick your best game to show up in this situation. So that's what I think has you feeling positive about them looking ahead. But I do think the chatter when it comes to that game yesterday, coming out of that game, is yes, Texas wins and now Ohio State. But I think the big spotlight's on Cam Scatterbo, and that Arizona State team, and that's great that they're going to get some love coming out of this one despite the loss.
I think there were he threw up on the sidelines. It was almost, and I've seen this before. I don't think I've experienced it because I've never played at a level high enough, but you get so hyperventilated, so emotionally charged that you can't breathe, or you have to throw up, or maybe you drank the wrong stuff.
He said he got waterlogged.
Yeah, got waterlogged, and so he did 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, 99 yards receiving, including a critical catch down the sideline when he also was bumped, and then also the face mask call. He caught a 42-yard touchdown pass that was a wounded duck that just happened to be in the right place at the right time for a touchdown. 284 yards of total offense against UT in the loss. And so their season ends, and 3 teams in the Big 12 end up with 11 wins: Iowa State, BYU, and also Arizona State.
Hey, look, I think BYU, of everybody who's got a playoff beef, I think BYU maybe has the one that, if you look at them, and I'm not look, you have to make decisions. I think the committee got it mostly right. But I think that when you look at it through the lens of, let's see who has these best seasons within the new metric of not everybody's schedule within their own conference is going to be equal. So just like painting the wall with SEC and Big Ten and saying your conference is better, well, Indiana kind of proved that you can have a schedule that's not all that tough in a tough conference. The teams in the SEC, same thing. So now that we have that, you maybe need to just, instead of looking things as like a conference whole, you kind of have to look at as who are the teams that they played individually and do that. And I think once you stop painting the wall with that, I think it should get better. That's a difficult thing to do. I know I just said, hey, dismiss all your preconceived notions about everything.
People are going to have opinions. I've learned now that I just am not going to get caught up in them as much. I'll respond to them and have my own, but no one's ever going to be happy. But the fact was, a great game yesterday. And then Oregon got destroyed by Ohio State. One other note about the Texas game at Arizona State. At one point, and the score at the time was 17-8. Arizona State can also look in the mirror on some things that happened, not just the long pass they gave up or the punt return that they gave up to Silas Bolden, who's really become a major problem with what he's done now in the punt return game, and he was fantastic at Oregon State. Arizona State, 11 plays, 45-yard drive. Took 5 minutes off the clock. They ended up turning the ball over on downs. 9 plays, 37 yards. Took 4 minutes off the clock. Turned it over on downs. 12 plays, 61 yards. Took 4 minutes off the clock. Blocked field goal. 11 plays, 60 yards. Took 6 minutes off the clock. Turned it over on downs. And then 11 plays, 50 yards to make it 17-8 with a field goal after a drive that took off 7 minutes off the clock. So they didn't finish the drives many times from the start of the game until the end of the game. They did kick the field goal on the opening possession.
And if they could rely on their kickers, the game probably feels a little bit different as well.
Does it? Because Texas had their problem too.
Yeah, but I mean, but it does. Like, it feels different if you can rely on your kicker. I know this. This is a universal truth. From Pee Wee all the way up to the NFL. If you have to use more than one kicker in a season, it's all bad news. It's all bad news.
Yeah, I mean, that was something else, man. College kickers, I mean, that's a hashtag for a reason, and boy, that was something else to see for the Texas side of things, and that was an entire story for Arizona State just a few weeks ago. Kenny Dillingham talking about conducting walk-on tryouts, and then that kind of fizzled out because I think almost maybe it went bad PR-wise in a way that he was talking maybe too much about how bad the kicking game was, so he kind of backed off of that. But, yeah, that certainly came into play yesterday. It was an incredible game. I think, Quinn Ewers, to your point a few moments ago, he seems to shine when the stress is on, and hey, I'll start off the game really bad, they'll bench me, and guess what? Then I'll come back and play my best. He just kind of almost has to have that pressure to be the best version of Quinn Ewers a lot of the times. But, hey, you'd rather have him be that way than the opposite way where he doesn't show up in crunch time or when the pressure's on. So, we'll see where that eventually takes them. But he did make the plays when it mattered the most. Cam Scatteraboo is, again, a superstar coming out of that game. You just wish that all the attention didn't come now that he's done, now that he's going to the NFL.
Yeah.
You wonder what that could have looked like if maybe people would have paid more attention earlier on, but it's the circumstances, the spotlight was moving around and it didn't settle on Arizona State till late. But, yeah, there's a lot of things from that game, a lot of missed opportunities from that game that's going to keep Kenny Dillingham up. But I think between, just the reaction to Scatteraboo or just his coaching and their journey in general, there's a lot of good juju around Arizona State. I think if you're a Big 12 fan, that they did carve out a notch of respect that otherwise wasn't there from these playoffs and from this season in terms of the Big 12 and how it's viewed. And I do think that moving forward, their performance should be taken into consideration. It should be remembered when you're looking at next year and you're going, well, should a BYU have also gotten in, or should a so-and-so, I don't know, Iowa State also maybe gotten more love? And I think the answer is yes, and I think that Arizona State took a positive step in kind of generating some more of that conversation for the conference moving forward. So that was a win for everybody involved in the league.
No question, Craig. And also, again, why can't we just let something play out? Like even the game against Arizona State in Texas, when at one point it was 17-3. Ewers, in my opinion, it seemed like he's pretty sharp early, and then there's that midsection where he just kind of maybe gets, I don't know, he just gets out of, or other teams make plays, but he was incredible. I'll say this about Arizona State, though. I mentioned the drives in which they came away empty-handed most every time. 10-play, 75-yard touchdown when they jumped back in it. 3-play, 79-yard touchdown. They had the drive right before the half that they had to punt, or right before the end of regulation when they punted. Texas, what a win, and they move on against Ohio State. This will be the third time. I don't have anything up for you to put up, Garrett, but this is the third time that these two mega powers, and they do have unbelievable tradition and history, have played. There was the famous game in 2005 in Columbus at the Horseshoe when Texas beat Ohio State that really launched them into playing and winning the national championship against USC. The next year, I was at DK Royal Memorial Stadium when there was the return favor in Austin, and Ohio State won that game. And then there was the 2009 Fiesta Bowl, 24-21 Texas winning that game. There's one other note. On Arizona State quarterback Sam Levitt. Now, I understand this guy's very, very talented. I didn't get to watch Arizona State very often this year for whatever reason. I just didn't see them a lot. I got a chance to see them, in the Big 12 championship game and a couple of other games. This guy is a freaking stud, too. And what a great athlete he is. Tremendous ability to run. He was huge with that. He's coming back for another year. Also with Sawyer Robertson coming back, and other quarterbacks in the Big 12 ought to be one heck of a year, and will be fun to see how it all lines up in 2025.
Yeah, I watched him quite a bit. He's a gamer. He and Rocco Beck to me are very similar in their skill sets, in their ability to in the moment go, oh my gosh, like hey, let's go do something. He did that yesterday. Yeah, I enjoy Sam Levitt. I enjoyed that he talked a little trash. I think that kind of worked out for them. Like, throw out some swagger there, say that we think we can win the game. It got people to notice them for better or for worse, but I think they backed it up. So, yeah, I mean, you lose an double overtime to a team everybody kind of before the season picked to be in the final anyway. That's one hell of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, good for Sam Levitt in announcing that. He's a really good player. When they announced his transfer from Michigan State last year, I remember discussing it a little bit, but not being just blown away and thinking that this is a guy that will help lead them to the Big 12 championship and the college football playoff in his redshirt freshman season. But there they were over these last few weeks, and there they were yesterday, and there he was making plays. And so definitely in terms of the got right or got wrong or underestimated or overestimated, looking back, hindsight's 2020 kind of discussion, Sam Levitt deserved a lot more love and deserved a few more impact points looking at Arizona State than he was probably given in the preseason, and obviously by most everybody, considering where they were placed in the preseason rankings. But, yeah, he's a really good player, and he'll be a force to be reckoned with. I just wonder, why is he announcing that he's coming back? Like, is that what we're doing now? Everybody's hey, I'll be back. It's like, I would think so. You're a redshirt freshman, dude. Like, where?
Well, but because of you never know, maybe he wanted to clarify that.
I mean, sure, but that's my point. Is like that's wild to me that he would even have to say that after 1 year at Arizona State when he's played 1 year of real college football as a starter. So I guess that's just where we are now, that guys have to announce that at any moment of their career. But, I mean, it's great. It was received well, obviously, and that was something in the midst of not so great feelings and negativity following a loss that definitely raised your spirits a little bit. But I sort of found that odd of just, okay, it's another sign of the new era of college football that we're in, that the redshirt freshman's announcing he'll be back next year after your big, tough playoff loss. But, hey, that's great news. He'll definitely be somebody that's garnering a lot more buzz for Arizona State this upcoming preseason, and he will have a lot more respect on his name, and he'll probably have a lot of honors that he'll be in the mix for, Big 12 preseason quarterback, first team. He'll be in that discussion. He'll maybe, be in the overall preseason Heisman discussion just in terms of being the starting quarterback of a playoff team coming back. So, yeah, that's great. And he'll be somebody they need because they won't have Scattaboo coming back next year.
If I'm a running back, I want to play in that offense, though.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, Craig, I want you to work on a list of the quarterbacks coming back from the Big 12 because I think there are a chunk of really good ones. All right.
That's basically everybody. I mean, Rocco Beck, Jalen Daniels, all of them are basically coming back. Everybody but Shador, and I'd have to go down the list. Noah Fafita's back.
Whatever's happening at UCF.
The kid from Cincinnati.
Yeah, he'll be back.
He's back. He already announced he's back. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So UCF will have to announce their starting quarterback at some point, but not knowing that, can't count them. So, yeah, outside of Shador Sanders,
Avery Johnson's
he's
coming back.
Baron Morton's back. They're all back.
Yep, it's going to be fun. All right. A couple of notes, and we will get into the other bowl games. We'll check in on that Alabama game with Michigan and discuss that. A couple of notes on that in another segment. And, yes, Baylor and LSU, the Tigers just had too much firepower and the kick return and much more. Man, I think their backup wide receivers with some guys who didn't play like Kyron Lacey are probably as good as Baylor's starting wide receivers. Cameron's really good. Hawkins and Monterey Baldwin, we understand, are good. But their backups are dynamic, and a lot of them will be back to help Brian Kelly and that team. Nussmeier was fantastic, but we'll dig into that a little bit more on what it meant.
I want to throw something that you said a running back will play well in that offense. I'd want to be there. Guess who they do have coming in next year at Arizona State? Kanye Udo from Army.
Oh, the big kid. The big kid from Army that is a banger, too, by the way, just like Cam Scattaboo. Who I was wondering about. I thought he would end up with like 25 carries for 75 yards. And for a while there, I wondered about whether he'd get the 75 yards. But they finally got him loose. And they also played, remember, without Jordan Tyson, their tremendous wide receiver who got a lot of sideline shots time in that game. Quick note before we break and come back with Sam Kahn. Baylor has announced that they have Auburn and SMU next week in a non-conference game next year. In a non-conference game, they're going to also now add Samford, who is normally somebody that a couple of teams in the SEC will play. That game will be in early September.
Who is Samford's greatest alumnus?
Bobby Bowden.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bobby Bowden is that one. Okay, any guys want to put a bow on it before we take a break, because we need to get to Sam at 3:30.
No, but we got to talk a lot about Oregon getting boat raced.
No, we will. We will.
Later on.
We will.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait for that discussion.
Ohio State is on fire. What a game it's going to be, you hope, with Texas coming up in about a week and a half. Thank you again for those of you with us today. 365 Sports. We've had a long break. We came back and did a show Monday in Houston, and now back on the air. We appreciate your time. This is 365 Sports.
Don't miss the best price deals during the wrap-up of year sales event at Allen Samuels. Save big on the truck you've been looking for, like the new 2025 Rams. Designed to be durable, functional, and stylish, Ram trucks give you that first-class feel. Hurry in and shop our great selection in-store or online today. Shop an award-winning dealership with award-winning product. Allen Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Our communities are facing unprecedented times. At Boozer's Jewelers, we care about you and your family. If you're like me, your home has unwanted or unused jewelry lying around. They can have value, and that means we can turn that jewelry into instant cash. This is a great way to get the most value from your unwanted jewelry. At Boozer's Jewelers, we buy all kinds of unused jewelry. So give us a call and let us give you peace of mind and cash for your unwanted or unused jewelry.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
We appreciate those of you joining us here on an earlier show, but also the fact we'll be on this afternoon, 365 Sports. Sam Kahn joins us early. We appreciate his time and commitment to us from theathletic.com. Sam, I think that game, if you look at all the various things with Texas beating Arizona State, 4th and 13 in overtime, it looks like it's over. I didn't understand what Arizona State did. Kenny Dillingham even admitted that he tried to check back out of it, but Ewers beat them to the punch. What a moment for him and the Texas team to get themselves back in the game and force another overtime.
Yeah, it was really unreal to see that happen in real time. You don't get those types of moments, certainly not with that on the line very often, with a team's back against the wall, really the season on the brink, and having to make that one play. And right before Ewers' throw, Kelvin Banks commits a false start. So it goes from 4th and 8 to 4th and 13 and make it that much more difficult. I will say I agree with you. I look back at the replay later and wondered to myself at 4th and 13, why did they send 6 guys and go with zero coverage on the back end and allowed Matt Golden to get behind the defense? But credit Quinn Ewers for what he did there. He checked the protection, adjusted the max protection. They picked up the blitz beautifully, and he made a great throw to Golden And that's where it was going to forever live in Texas lower. That kept their national championship hopes alive.
How much money do you think Cam Scatterbo made himself yesterday?
So that's a fascinating question. We were talking about this last night on the shuttle ride back to the hotel. I wonder yes, he probably helped himself from scouts' eyes, but I do wonder if there's some degree of scouts who will look at him and say, golly, that kid has taken a lot of punishment in the last year because of how many hits he endures and delivers himself. But there's no doubt that he opened the eyes of people who maybe didn't get to see him all year. I know those of us in this conversation here, we've watched a lot of Big 12 football, and we did get to see him. He validated why he was on my Heisman ballot. He was one of the three that I had and voted for. And I felt very validated by that yesterday. And watching him in person, the funny thing is more than the trick play or some of the big plays that impressed me was the short gains that he had. I think to the time, the 4th and 2 stop near the goal line when Vernon Broughton came through the middle of defense untouched and leveled him. And he stayed on his feet. And then later, of course, we know he fought through Bill Norton, who's 335 pounds, and then got carried into the end zone after that. The fact that guy at that size and stature has the lower body strength to stay on his feet after enduring those types of hits is incredible to me. I don't know that I've ever seen a running back quite as strong as him, but also the determination that he showed amidst the fatigue and, puking his brains out and everything. It was a legendary performance, and I'm privileged to say that I was able to be there in person to see it.
Sam, I don't like necessarily all the conference battle lines that have been drawn because of the expanded playoff and all of their realignment. I certainly understand it, but there is differing levels of kind of respect and disrespect that get played. And, the Big 12 is definitely a conference that feels like it's got a big chip on its shoulder right now. Do you think Arizona State's performance doesn't guarantee anything moving forward, but did at least shine a little bit of a light on the league and hey, maybe they should get consideration for the BYU or the Iowa State that didn't get any consideration beyond just the champion this year? Do you think that maybe they made a little bit of inroads or at least opened the eyes a little bit of, hey, there's teams in other leagues they can play too and maybe deserve more than just one glance here and there?
I sure hope so. And when BYU did what they did to Colorado the other night, I saw the talking point come up, and I thought it was absolutely true. And I think we all had this conversation in the weeks leading into the playoff after BYU's loss to Kansas, is how they fell so far off the table in the conversation after being number 6 in the country. And it seems like, after they had their defeat, everyone just dismissed them, even though they had a pretty solid resume. I sure hope that this result leads to a little bit more respect for the conference. I will say the skeptic in me doesn't expect it, because when we get to the off season and we have 8-9 months to fill the airspace with before the next games are, eventually people are going to revert back to that Arizona State lost and Boise State lost and Indiana and SMU lost. And I hate that that's going to be the rhetoric, but I hope that people take into context what we have seen on the field is that Arizona State pushed Texas on the brink, that Boise State was actually pretty competitive with Penn State, that Oregon got its doors blown off, granted by it was another Big Ten team, but that was the supposed number 1 team in the country. And, oh, by the way, these SEC teams that we're crowing about, Tennessee got its doors blown off and not making the playoff. Alabama, I don't want to say embarrassed itself, but pretty close, certainly embarrassed itself in the first quarter of that game against Michigan. And to me, if nothing else, it should remove benefit of the doubt from programs and conferences that we've been giving benefit of the doubt to. There is no juggernaut in this playoff, except maybe Ohio State now that emerged as one unexpectedly. But the era of the super team, I think, is going away, and for a lot of reasons. With NIL, the transfer portal, I think that the division and the parity at the top of the sport is getting a little more mixed in. It's not as wide a gap anymore, in my opinion, from the very top big brands as it is to the rest of the top 25.
All right, what happened to Oregon? Because Ohio State has now bludgeoned Tennessee, and now they have destroyed Oregon. I thought that the advantage would be to the team that did not win that first game, considering it was in Eugene by just a point. But my goodness, what a showdown we have with Ohio State, Texas. But what the Buckeyes did to Oregon was awe-inspiring in some ways.
Yeah, no doubt. I only got to see bits and pieces of that because we were finishing up in Atlanta. But I will say this. Ohio State just looks like a different football team from what we saw a few weeks ago. I mean, when they lost to Michigan, we're talking about Ryan Day's job staff, which to me is also a little bit ridiculous, but I understand it given where Ohio State is as a program. But this is a team that now looks like the team that we thought they were going to be when they started the year. When they put that roster together, when they went heavy in the portal and they spent all this money to go get big-time transfers, this is the kind of team that we thought we might see. And now all of a sudden it's here. The things that strike me the most, obviously Jeremiah Smith and Ohio State's tradition at receiver is well documented. He is special without a doubt. And to me, the defensive line and what they have done on that defensive front, that's going to be what's fascinating for me to watch in the Cotton Bowl when they play Texas, is can Texas's front, which is very experienced and very good, can they handle Ohio State's defensive front? Because Texas had a problem running the ball on Wednesday. And so how much of an issue is that going to be? But Ohio State is playing it at a tremendously high level. They have the talent. They look like right now, I think you have to say they're the favorite to go all the way.
Sam, off-season priorities for college football, I would say let's talk about the seeding in this playoff, which I think is the only thing really that and multiple neutral site games are the things they've got to talk about. And let's figure out targeting, like what is targeting, what it does, if there's levels of targeting. Like I guess Smokey told me, I didn't even see this tweet, but Connor Stallions of all people was like, make it like a flagrant foul in the NBA. Let's think about those things. Is any other priorities you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot, obviously, I mean, from a big picture standpoint in figuring out the settlement and what the rosters are going to look like and all that, getting that finalized. I think that still has to get approved, what NIL is going to look like moving forward. But as far as the playoff goes, my biggest ticket item is let's get these quarterfinal games off the bowl site. And that's no disrespect to the Bulls, by the way. I was here at the Peach Bowl, still here in Atlanta right now, and they did great. And I love that experience. It is a lot of fun. But there were a lot of empty seats yesterday because you're asking Texas fans to go to Atlanta. They went to Atlanta for the SEC title game. They're in Atlanta now for the quarterfinal, and then you're going to maybe ask them to go to the Atlanta if they make it to the national championship game again. You're asking you're asking college fans to go to multiple neutral site games in succession, which is expensive with flights and hotels and the tickets, by the way, which are pretty expensive. The first round atmospheres at these games were terrific. And I think getting the quarterfinal games on campus should be a high priority. Whether we do something with the bye, I'm torn on it. I understand why I think people say we should. I want to put some value on winning a conference, but I understand the argument of saying, hey, let's just seed the top four and do it that way. Because Oregon got a tough draw. Oregon was the number one team, and they ended up with a tougher draw. And had they won, and Ohio State won, they're going to have to play Texas in the state of Texas, which I feel like is a little bit ridiculous when if you were Oregon and you were the top seed and you had to go do that, that's a disadvantage to you. Ohio State's a lower seed, so maybe it's not as big an issue anymore, but I still think that's an issue. So those are all things that I think need to be dealt with. But to me, those are I would start with the home sites first. I think getting quarterfinals into the home sites, and if we do semifinals, bowls for semifinals and championship, I think I can live with that.
By the way, if Notre Dame beats Georgia, none of the top four seeds or conference champions will be a part of the semifinals.
That's wild. That would be wild, and I think that would strengthen the case for changing how we see the team.
Here's another thing, and also maybe the bye, even though conference champions are in a conference game, so they play an extra game compared to the others. The teams that played in the first round have outscored those who had a bye 42-3 in the first quarter.
That's incredible. And see, this is where it becomes very complicated, because I think the bye, in theory, we think of it as advantage, and I think it is, because you get your team rested up and healed up. But there is a element of, when you're hot, you want to keep playing. And where do conference championship games fit into all this too? Because I feel like those are going to get deprioritized as we move forward. And certainly if we expand the playoff, I think those are going to get deprioritized even further. I don't know if they'll ever go away because they make money. But the one thing I would say before we go further with all this is just the first time we're doing this. So I do think it's a little bit tricky to draw grand conclusions on just this one time. But unfortunately, this is how we operate as a sport. And, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are over here closely monitoring whatever is going to happen, because they're going to you only have a 2-year span until the next contract kicks in 26 for the playoffs. So you're going to make format changes. It's going to have to be done in short order. And to me, it is a little bit tricky and treacherous to do it on such a small sample size.
Yeah. Hey, man, get some rest. I know you had a wild one. What a game to be at. The best game, it appears to me, that we've seen. Congratulations to Texas, and Arizona State had a great run too. But we appreciate your time. Thanks a lot, and have a great rest of the week.
Thanks so much. Y'all too. Take care.
That's Sam Cotton Jr., theathletic.com. Bracket Cat brought this up when I mentioned the teams that were in a conference championship game, and they played an extra game. Penn State was. So was Texas. They've won twice. Mm-hmm. They've won twice. They had to play in the first round. That did not affect them. But the off time, which in the NFL, you fight, scratch, and claw to get to the playoffs, and you absolutely want a first-round bye. That's one less game to play for maybe health reasons or whatever. I'll never forget Tom Osborne when Nebraska went through a stretch where they could not win bowl games, and it was because of how they structured the practices after any kind of a layoff. Remember, there was one game. There wasn't possibly 4, and he changed how they started to run, because they ran what was basically an option attack from the I formation, and very much a lot of that was timing. And they would have a layoff, and it just took a little longer for them to get it quite right, and he changed it up. And when he did, plus he had better players too, it seemed like they got on a heck of a roll when it came to the postseason, because of the timing that you might lose by not playing in the opening round. Carissa asking about being on early. Well, the Sugar Bowl, of course, with the tragedy, was moved to 3 o'clock today, and so we wanted to get in as many of the topics as possible from what we have at this particular time, and give everybody a chance, if they want to enjoy watching the Sugar Bowl today at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, we're just throwing a bone to the TV network because we knew we'd take away all the viewers from that game, So we were like, let's help out college football. Let's go on early. Let's not distract from Notre Dame, Georgia, and take away from that audience,
Yeah, that was the thinking. That was the thinking. I mean, we're very powerful. Yeah. And I don't want to knock ESPN off their rightful perch.
Well, they're kind of wobbly anyway because of some things.
All right, look, you have a 4K TV, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, you have a 4K TV. Why in the hell are you not doing the games in 4K? I was pissed.
I guess I do. I don't know. I have a nice, beautiful big screen, but I'm not sure if it's 4K.
Yeah, I don't know, but they have had their month of just takes and blows back and everything else. And man, I almost had like PTSD here in Herb Street's voice yesterday. The first time it came on there, I was like, oh my God, like what are we talking about today? Because after this long break of just hearing thoughts for like the last week and a half, and then just delving back into that deep end and all that, it was very interesting to get back to just football for ESPN, I'm sure.
I was very happy that all this happened, because I am part of, admittedly, a crazy fan base who does not normally see the forest through the trees all that well. And because of that, because of all the other crazy things that FSU does, the one rightfully, the conspiracy theory that was true was about Kirk Herbstreit, and a lot of people were like, you're just mad at Herbstreit because he doesn't like you. Well, it's not just us, buddy. Welcome aboard the crazy bandwagon that is FSU Twitter.
Yeah, not more FSU Twitter with a little bit of redemption, at least people joining in.
Bit.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I think obviously we've touched on the fact that this game got moved, and as much as anything, we're college football fans first and foremost, so I think we all selfishly just want to watch that game. We don't want to be on the air distracted by talking about stuff when we can jump on a little earlier. So that's the main reason is we want to be college football fans and watch that game like everybody else. But, yeah, I hope it goes smoothly. And it's a great game. But, yeah, obviously there's bigger concerns right now in New Orleans. But I hope that goes off without a hitch and we get a heck of a football game. But definitely thoughts elsewhere as well on more important matters for the city.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredible. Super Bowl is going to be there, remember, in the second week. I guess the first full week in February. Paxton, all I'm hearing is targeting. No, you're not. Not from this show. We brought it up for a very slight second, mainly more about how they should handle it. We have talked about Quinn Ewers. We have talked about Matthew Golden, Scadaboo, and Levitt, and what a great game it was, Arizona State and Texas.
My point was not that call in a vacuum in that big game, it's going to get talked about. My thing is, like, I feel it's now become like the Calvin Johnson, Des Bryant catch rule where I don't know what it is. And I don't know if the officials really know what it is or how to adjudicate it and when to adjudicate it. And I just think it needs to be looked at so we're not having the discussion about it because Arizona State had multiple opportunities to win the game after that, and they didn't. So there are things that happen. I don't think unless it's the very last play of a game that a call ever directly affects the result.
Yeah, we're definitely not dwelling on that, but it is something that you mentioned amongst various other things like Quinn Ewers' ability to make plays under pressure or whatever other little storyline from that game you want to use. Matthew Golden having the big moments there, so on and so forth. There's a lot to unpack from that game, but I do think it's fair to acknowledge and say this is effing stupid that none of us know what this rule is on any given moment or any given game. Yeah. That's what's stupid. That doesn't even matter who played yesterday. In a game like that, in any game, we should not, years down the road, still not be able to sit here and go like all agree on what it is or what it isn't. The fact that it's still so open to interpretation and that one game you watch the same hit and it is, and then you watch another game and it's not. That's just not good for the sport. And I think it's the example you gave, Paul, there is right of we shouldn't be jockeying over this gray area. It should be black and white for the most part. That's something that when you're talking about reseeding the playoff and what changes would better the sport, that's another thing that would better the sport would be to clear that up and get that into being more black and white than just the gray area that it is.
I agree. GXZ 4 zeros. ASU depended on trick plays, penalties, and Texas continuing to blank on themselves. The overall total yards, now again, the 70-some yard punt return would be a part of the total yards. That's hidden yardage, as they say. Bill Parcells used to bring that up. It was a great football game.
Okay, this era sucks, dude.
By the way,
this era sucks, man.
Yeah.
Can we just give credit to people? Like, why does everything have to be hating on something?
How they won, how they did it. Game plan's a game plan, man. It doesn't there's not. You shouldn't have.
Well, we don't need to burn energy on it, but it's just give ASU credit. A lot of people didn't think they'd even make this a game. Vegas thought this was going to be a 2-3 score game. I don't think anybody, for the most part, maybe outside of Tempe, was anticipating the type of game we got, or maybe teams and fans and media and so forth that watched Cam Scadaboo and Sam Levitt and the Sun Devils do their thing throughout the year. But, I saw a lot of back and forth on the game afterwards. And I think the thing that I walked away was man, if I'm a Texas fan, I'm going, respect to ASU. Y'all gave us a hell of a fight. And if I'm ASU, I'm going, hey, respect to Texas. You guys went out and you made the plays at the end. We're not going to sit here and squabble over a targeting call when there were so many big swings in that game. We're not going to squabble over what you allowed or what you didn't. Man, this is a hell of a football game. Don't be a hater. Just give it up and move on.
No, we have – that's okay. We wanted to read it. I disagree, and I think it's not giving credit to what hell of a game. Part of that is part of the game. If you can't do it one way, eventually, though, that set up what they did with 200 and some yards rushing against a Texas defense that I didn't know if Scadaboo would sniff 70 yards or more in that game.
Yeah, I guess just my thing, and the final thing on it is just when I walk away from a game like that, the last thing on my mind is how can I poke holes in this performance for somebody?
Yeah,
how can I bring this down? It's no, hey, two great teams, great game, great players, great playoff game, by far the best playoff game. The sport needed that yesterday, guys. The sport needed a game like that in this playoff, and they got a big-time performance from both teams that was very entertaining and had, Twitter and just all of college football fandom abuzz yesterday. So that was great to see. And we haven't talked much about the follow-up, which I know that we will. But, yeah, they definitely set the tone on New Year's Day for some good football, and that was fun to see.
Yeah, it has. We will go and kind of dig into what Alabama did this year, not just with what happened against Michigan where they tried to come back and just fell short, but also the losses they had, which is stunning when you look at the history of what they've been doing. Also, Baylor and LSU, great win for Brian Kelly. Nussmeier was an absolute alpha. And they had a big return in that game, the 95-yard kick return. Sawyer Robertson, an image of Robertson when Weeks, the star linebacker from LSU, went down on a play at the goal line, and more. This is 365 Sports. I don't have it. Here we go. I got lulled to sleep, Garrett, when you played that first one. The Baylor alumni fan engagement. In fact, Doug Furch, great guy. What they did. It's not about what they're about to do, and they'll have events coming up when they have lunch with the legends. They have different type of special events for alums, letter winners, etc. And then whenever Baylor's on the road and there's a big moment, for example, men's basketball at the Big 12 tournament, and what might be, of course, you would think an NCAA tournament appearance, but after the way the Big 12 has gotten off to a start, who knows who makes it out of that crazy conference. But one thing they did was set you up with greatness when it was in Houston. With what they did when it came to the team hotel, events around the team hotel, a dinner the night before for alums and donors, boosters, etc., former players who were able to have a nice reunion and enjoy that. I've been to a few of those over the years, and they do such a great job with that. If you have an event or you want to know more about an event, go to the Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement or Baylor University Facebook page and look it up. Doug Furch or Paul Thorpe, the Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement.
Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, how lovely are your SUVs. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, I love the trucks you have for me. Strong and tough with luxury, room for all my family. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, you are the dealership for me.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Penny Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Penny Clinic Waco and reach out to the Penny Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Penny to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pennycliniclowt.com.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
New Orleans and the Sugar Bowl today, 3 o'clock. And, of course, Notre Dame and Georgia try to get to the next level. Winner will play Penn State in the other semifinal besides that Ohio State and Texas game. Here's an image when Weeks, a star linebacker at LSU, who's the heart and soul, Mike Scarborough sent me a text, the heart and soul of that football team, went down on a goal line play and had a leg injury. They had to bring the card out, and that's Sawyer Robertson, who was, of course, on the field after the play, leaning down to put his hand on Weeks to kind of pray for him. I saw this went viral with the young man that took the picture, and so that was a very cool moment in that game, despite the fact Weeks, his brothers on the team, was on the sideline. You could tell he was shaking with tears. But LSU was better. LSU had players opt out like others did too. They were better. They didn't have Kyron Lacey didn't need him. Nussmeier's phenomenal. The defense was just enough to kind of like put Baylor in a little bit of a bind, and they were a better team. That was a nice win for LSU, and Baylor still doesn't stop what they did at the end of the year. They're set up pretty good for next year, you would think, but it does show what they are vulnerable in that secondary they had been all year long.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll let Garrett speak a little bit more to Whit Weeks and what he means to that team. Although they did get relatively good news on him. It was a dislocated ankle, but it wasn't –
right.
There were no tears. So he's going to have the surgery to repair it. He could be back for spring. I say don't waste it on spring. Just let him rehab and get better. There's a dude who probably – if I had to pick a guy on the LSU defense who doesn't need spring, it would be Whit Weeks. He's a badass. If I were to make, maybe I need to do that, Bruce Feldman makes his freaks list. I just need to make the Paul Catalina badass list. You know, guys like Whit Weeks and Cam Scattaboo and Ashton Genty all on that. Whit Weeks is certainly that. And, he was a fantastic player. And watching LSU kind of overcome this, gigantic portal departure and see some of their depth come up, that's a coaching win for Brian Kelly, who did not – come out of the back end of that season warmly received by his fan base.
Yeah, I mean, good to know that that's not really terrible news for Whit Weeks and that he should be back sooner rather than later. Definitely could have been worse, but, it certainly felt like it was going to be the worst kind of news, just the way the reaction was in the stadium at the time, and his brother bawling on the sidelines and all of that. So the fact that that wasn't as bad as it looked at the time is terrific for him and everybody involved with him, from family to fans. But give credit to LSU for just being the better team, playing the better game, making the biggest plays in the most important moments, and they were very impressive. The fact that they had so many guys that it opted out. And I don't want to overplay it and act like 95% of the team wasn't showing up. They did have some guys who had departed, but I think it became very clear early on that they were going to be just fine moving forward with the talent that is on that roster that had the opportunity then to play and to showcase themselves. No lack of skill players there, guys, Kyron Lacey or not.
Yeah.
They're going to be just fine. That didn't seem to bother them too much. I did feel like early on when they kind of swarmed Baylor with the pick six. I mean, that was the thing that kind of just turned the whole tide of that game, where it's 7-0, and then all of a sudden it's 14-0. You're like, uh-oh. But it did feel early on like we were going to have a conversation about talent disparity, and I don't think we so much have to have that. I think maybe it's still a conversation, but just not as big of one by the end of the game as it felt like it was going to be early on in that game.
Mm-hmm. And would you say which more, the skill positions or the dudes in the trenches?
I think you can point to both, actually. When you look at Baylor's lack of pass rush, the inability to get to Nussmeier whatsoever, especially given that LSU did have some O-linemen missing. That's credit to LSU for having some good young guys or backups in the trenches. But I think you could also look at the whole season for Baylor and say they weren't very good at getting to the passer, right? So with the secondary, not the the Kyron Laces of the world out there, but the young dudes for LSU. Who's the big receiver?
Straight as Green.
Yeah, Straight as Green. Like, I couldn't think of his name. My gosh, like, I mean, what a freak show, right?
6'7", 245.
Yeah, so like that was the guy you turned to. It's like, well, a lot of people would love to have that problem, wouldn't they? So with that as well. What was the problem that I did mention in the pregame on Saturday? That the one thing I was worried about, like you asked me about looking forward and like what are your concerns? No, you asked me about like looking forward, and I was like, well, it's kind of hard to say right now because we haven't even finished this season. You don't know what the roster is going to look like. Yeah. But if there was one thing that you were probably concerned about, you could pinpoint throughout the season's been issues, the secondary. And what was the issue on game day, as much as anything? It was a secondary in a lot of cases. Again, what did Dave Aranda say? It was like their number one thing they have to get better at in the offseason. It was a secondary, right? So the secondary did rear its head. The lack of pressure did rear its head, but I'll give LSU a lot of credit because I think that the talent level reared its head, at least early on in that game as well. I think the biggest thing for Baylor walking away from that is you just made way too many mistakes. I mean, you shot yourself in the foot over and over again. You can't give a team like LSU a kick return touchdown, a pick six, like all these things that added up. And yet there they were still in the fight in the later rounds. I mean, improbable as it seemed early on in that game, they were there and had an opportunity, and then you snap the ball over Sawyer Robertson's head and you basically end the game there. But I think we were in store for a hell of a finish until that happened. I'm not so sure they don't win that game. If that snap is actually good, don't want to place the blame all on one single play, but that was definitely like the nail in the coffin, it felt like, in that game. But LSU deserves a ton of credit. Brian Kelly really needed that. And I think Baylor has a bad taste in their mouth for a moment, but then you realize, hey, that was still a really great year, and that's a year that you can build off of. So both teams, I think, go into the offseason feeling pretty good about what's next for them both.
Yeah, I agree. Sawyer Robertson had 445 yards, of course, threw 51 times. He's good. He's a gunslinger. And I look forward to what they're going to do to reload with the transfer portal. They do have a couple of edge rushers coming in that can also help your secondary if you can put pressure on the opposing quarterback.
And I think that when you look at Baylor and their new approach to the transfer portal, which was deficient in years past, I think that they showed this year they know how to. They figured out how to work it.
They had a reason.
Yeah.
They had a game plan. I spoke with somebody that's a part of what they do with the NIL, that they had a game plan. They pretty much were able to pick and choose. They didn't get everybody. Everyone that says they did, no matter what, they're lying, like on National Signing Day. But they had a reason specifically of who they wanted. And they had okay, here are 4 players for edge rushers. And they got 2 of the 4. They didn't get all of them. But that now they still have work to do. There's still a lot more to be done when it comes to picking and choosing when it comes to the transfer portal.
Yeah, I'm not going to give them too much credit, but I'll give them credit for the fact that they are not wasting any time. But I won't give them too much credit because it's like you've already learned your lesson there.
Yeah.
You already know the stove is hot. So what are you going to do? Are you going to learn that lesson, or are you going to sit there and start trying to touch the stove again and not go into the transfer portal and dig yourself a hole like you did following the 2021 season? So that's just the logical learning your lesson and changing the way you do things and reacting. And that's exciting if you're a fan of the program, because you know that they're not resting on their laurels, and they're not just going to say, hey, that was a great year, let's take a breather. It's like, nope, it's on to the next thing. They're already attacking it before the bowl game even occurs. And so that's what needs to happen, and that's what didn't happen the last time around, and it nearly could have cost Dave Aranda his job. So lesson learned, not going to fall victim to that line of thinking again.
Alabama. Oh, my goodness. They were squawking. So was some of the talking heads who think they're more important in the game of college football at times. Some of them who did not like the fact you might have disagreed with them. Alabama was a 14-point favorite when Nick Saban was there 138 times. They lost 3 times. Kalen DeBoer was a 14-point favorite 9 times this year and lost 3 times. To Vanderbilt, Michigan, Oklahoma, and those are the 3 losses. Oklahoma wasn't close. Michigan, they kind of got back in it, but they couldn't make the play at the end. Vanderbilt, of course, beat them up and kind of opened the eyes of a lot of people. They had a good team, too. But look at that stability of what Nick Saban, not winning a national title or 7, it's the rarely ever saw them just flummoxed in a game. Yeah, Manziel got Alabama or a couple of others, but you never saw them just be like clueless.
But when you beat Alabama as a 14-point dog in the Nick Saban era, it's because you had a Johnny Manziel or some kind of, once-in-a-lifetime dude, right? You had this person who was just having a moment. And there were other times in those 135 games he won, there were dudes having moments, but guess what happened? They won the game. This is not so much an indictment on Kalen DeBoer. It's just another thing about this is how good Nick Saban was. Mm-hmm. He was that much better than everybody else. And you know how bad Alabama's loss to Michigan was yesterday as far as perception? Paul Feinbaum himself came out and was like,
I was trying not to use his name to give him any time.
When he admits that he was wrong, I think that, we gotta give people a cookie for when they do something good sometimes.
Yeah, but he acted like an asshole up until the fact he admitted.
Yeah, I'm not going to give him too much credit because all the damage done and the words that were said and the important decision-making moments that, could have slanted opinions here and there. But, yeah, eventually when the obvious is the obvious, what do you do? Oh, yeah, I was wrong about that. So I'll give him the most partial of credit for that and anybody else who pivots and does the same. But I guess it is better than the alternative of just continuing to have your head in the sand and – acting the opposite. But, yeah, that was, I think, less an indictment on DeBoer, that stat, and more of just like, look how great Nick Saban is. He's the greatest college coach of all time, college football coach of all time. You want the Alabama job? Here's the kind of pressure that comes with that. You still have a winning record against, what was it, ranked teams? What was that exact stat?
Oh, God. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't remember.
The stat we just showed. Alabama's a 14-point favorite.
No, that's against 14-point underdogs. That's a dominant. When they're up, expected to roll people, they did, yeah.
Yeah, that's the stat I'm talking about. So, that's
well, you said ranked teams. That got me confused. I'm sorry.
Right, I was trying to figure out what the stat was. This is the stat. Kalen DeBoer still 6-3, and yet we're talking about it like it's a bad thing. That is life as Alabama's head coach when the comparison is a guy who is 135-3. So all he has to do is go 129-0, and the next 129 opportunities he can match Saban's mark there. But, yeah, that's the kind of pressure cooker that job will be for anybody in that head seat post-Saban. So you knew what you signed up for, and elite is what is expected. But I think as much as people say – you need the Lakers to be great in the NBA for the NBA to be its best. The Yankees need to be good for everybody to enjoy baseball. I don't always agree with that. I don't think that's always the case for me personally as a sports fan, but I do understand the sentiment, and I do understand why Lakers-Celtics is always going to be bigger than the Magic versus somebody or whatever. But, man, you know what else is great? When Alabama's not the elite of the elite. This is awesome. I love this era now, that they are not the impenetrable, undefeatable, immovable object that's just the machine that's going to roll everybody. The fact that they are a little bit vulnerable, but they're not bad, they're still very good, is great for college football, in my opinion, especially in an era of the expanded playoffs. So I know that's a bad stat for Bama fans. I think that's a great stat for college football fans as a whole, and you still want them, or it's still good for them to be good in some ways, but I think it's also very healthy for them not to have a stranglehold on the sport the way that they did for the past 2 decades in many ways.
Well, Alabama, by the way, that A&M game, I just looked it up. They were 13.5-point favorites in 2012 when Johnny Football lit up college football throughout that year. So there's that with also Rod Babers. Rod Babers, who covers UT, will join us in about 15 minutes or so. Georgia and Penn State, the winner will get
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame and Georgia will get Penn State. At the start of the college, after the first round, I didn't say it because we weren't on for a long, long time, but I did have this thought. Are we sleeping on these two teams? Are they not getting enough credit because maybe they look boring or the colors of their uniforms or the lack of them? Because they both have looked solid. Now, Penn State, Boise State, I listened to that game on the way home from Houston. They were competitive for a long time. Notre Dame, of course, dominated Indiana in their opening game. Are these two teams getting enough oomph? Now, Notre Dame might be out by 6 o'clock tonight. I don't know. But are they getting enough love in this field of the 5 teams that are left, in your opinion?
I think Georgia gets plenty of love.
No. I didn't say Georgia.
Oh, Penn State.
Notre Dame and Penn State.
Penn State is probably not because they are victims of their own circumstance, but they were the ones who benefited from the little seeding flaw in this, and that they got SMU and Boise State, although I don't think their win over Boise State was any kind of mandate that a team like Boise State can't hang. Boise State hung enough. It just, Penn State's better. I mean, they just were better than them. So their critiques won't go away until they beat Notre Dame or Georgia in the next round. Now, if they do that, that would be the first time that James Franklin beats a team that nobody thinks he's going to beat, and that would be a huge thing for them. So Penn State's is going to hang around. Notre Dame, I think they've gotten the right amount of love, I think, for what they've done. I do think they took too much flack for that Northern Illinois loss.
As they should have.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think that they've kind of proven every moment since then that defense is legit. It might be, outside of Texas, the best one left in the whole thing, and their offense is good. I mean, it's not great, but Riley Leonard fits well with what they do, and they're tough, and they fight you the whole way down. So, yeah, look, I think Notre Dame wins tonight. I think that having a backup quarterback is kind of a dicey proposition going into a game like this. So I think Notre Dame wins. I think Georgia's tough, but I think Notre Dame's gotten the proper amount of love.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm going to reserve more of the conversation about not getting enough love for the Arizona States of the world as opposed to, Penn State being one of 3 teams from their conference to get into this playoff format without even, winning the conference or being in that seat. So I don't know. I feel like they've had the easiest draw at this point. They got the biggest favorite draw you could possibly get. They got a better draw than some of the teams they got to bye. So I'm not worried about Penn State's lack of respect at all. I think for Notre Dame, they proved after that Northern Illinois loss that they belong. I know there's still some doubters there, but you go and you beat Indiana and you beat them handily. And I know that didn't convince anybody either, but they've got a great opportunity against the Georgia team that's definitely somewhat vulnerable. So I think they're a win away from putting a big stamp on any doubt that may be out there. And the same thing goes for Penn State. Give Penn State credit. But, yeah, I'm not too worried about disrespect cards when one of them's already in the semifinals and the Final Four, and one of them, is a game away from being that. But, we'll see. I think – the disrespect, whatever that may be that's out there, is though valid. I can understand why you're maybe not sold still on Penn State because of who they played, but I don't know. I think that's the least of your concerns when it comes to the playoff is the lack of respect for, third Big Ten team they got in and is now in the semifinals, and the Irish who, I mean, what's a lack of respect to them? They're a team that's going to get the benefit of the doubt more often than not. They won a game to get in this next round, so we'll see. But I guess compared to Texas or Ohio State, they're not being mentioned as much.
No, that's exactly what I meant when I brought up the conversation. I do think that they're somewhat under the radar. Notre Dame, of course, playing Georgia in the Sugar Bowl should be one hell of a game. Interesting day because of what happened the morning of January the 1st in the tragedy that occurred. Paxton. I think it was a wake-up call for Texas. I don't believe in wake-up calls. I really don't. And here's why. To me, when you and I understand that maybe you get scared and you survive, and that's kind of what happened in the end. They did survive. They won the game. But the one thing, when you say it's a wake-up call, it's almost like downgrading, maybe not on purpose, the team you beat in Arizona State.
Well, I also think that Texas was, in this game, who they were all year. Right? I mean, everybody wants their team to be this unstoppable juggernaut of a great team, and that doesn't exist in college football this season. It really doesn't. Everybody's got flaws, and they showed their flaws, but they also showed their strengths where they can overcome their flaws. And great teams that win championships do. So nothing I saw from Texas yesterday was anything different than we saw all year long. Right? Am I wrong there? They
had not allowed people to run the football.
Well, yeah, but they didn't play Cam Scatterbo all year long. No. Sometimes it's just about, like we talked about Johnny Manziel in Alabama, sometimes it's just about that dude. And when, King Dingaling, Cam Scatterbo comes swinging that thing around, you can't stop it, right? So I think that sometimes that's just about the guy.
I'm not going to be able to get out of the vision of him slinging that thing around for quite some time. but they won the game, and they won it in a different style, and they didn't run the ball well. They couldn't stop the run, which is shocking because they ran right through Clemson. Arizona State's defense was really good. And remember, they played without one of their starting safeties because he was out in that game because of a penalty in the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State. When we come back, Rod Babers, his thoughts about UT. They advance. Survive and advance. Some teams didn't have to survive. They rolled into it, like, for example, Ohio State and also Penn State. His thoughts about it, what went right, what went wrong, what can be corrected, and Ohio State. This is 365 Sports. Don Chimidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center, off Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco. 48-foot walk-in humidor and loaded with Padron, Romeo and Julieta, Macanudo, Cohiba, great cigars, Rocky Patel, which has always been my favorite, and then a few others that are a little bit under the radar, so to speak, like, for example, La Fontana. I like their Churchill length cigar, and even the one they have, the Torpedo, which is a little bit of a smaller length. They have the gummies, CBD gummies. If you struggle at night falling asleep for whatever reason, maybe things are on your mind, or you do it even if things are good. Gummies from Vita Dreams is what they call it at Don Chimidor, that allows you to take a gummy, a half a gummy, maybe a couple of them. You kind of get to know along the way of what you want. If you have something and you just feel like, man, I'm not going to go to sleep tonight, take a gummy or two and make sure you get that good night's sleep or whatever it might be the next day. Don Chimidor and Coffee Beans with both Cheyenne and Joshua in the Town West Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient, with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6, and just east of I-35 in Waco.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
So on Trades Green, is that the name? That's his name, right? 6'7", 245. We were talking about anybody would like to have a wide receiver. Hell, I'd like to have a defensive end like that. Anybody. Just an unbelievable talent. Didn't catch a lot of yards, like 60 yards and 5 to 7 catches, but 2 touchdowns. I thought Anderson, who's kind of a little water bug in a way, caught there was a throw from Nussmeier one time and a throw to Anderson against Baylor on the sideline. He was rushing from the pocket, falling to the left, throws him back across his body on gorgeous dart to Anderson. I thought he was all of them were a problem in that game. They are loaded, and a nice win to close out the year.
He dropped, Green dropped one pass, and I think that's probably what he'll have to work on. But, you know, they lost Mason Taylor, who's going to be, I would say, the 3rd or 4th tight end off the board in the draft. I think that the first 2 will be Tyler Warren, who's an absolute monster. And Harold Fannin Jr. of Bowling Green. If you've not seen Harold Fannin Jr. play, you need to. He's super fun. But Trades Green, I think, given an off season, he'll be pretty lethal and a trusted target for Nuss.
Okay, we will hear from Rod Babers here in a moment. Ohio State is on fire. They've rolled into the semis. Obviously, Penn State in a way has too. What in the world if you're Oregon? Like, I'm sitting there, Dan Lanning has been fantastic for them. He's not afraid to say how he feels. He's been really good for them. And they were humiliated in that game by Ohio State. Ohio State showing what a lot of people were frustrated why they even lost to Michigan. But they were humiliated. And, they have a lot of glitz and glamour, but at the same time, they have not been able to get the big one, which, of course, is the one. Did you see the USC tweet about Oregon? 0 for Oregon, 0 for Oregon, 0 for national titles, which I thought for a team that was 6-7 was a little bit silly. Rod Babers on 3 Texas Football joins us with us, and also former Texas defensive back on 365 Sports. There you go. Rod, what a game. Just tell me about your overall thoughts on the game. We'll get into some specifics in a moment.
It was a great game. Yeah, if you were just watching as a spectator, it was a legendary game, right? If you're watching as a Longhorn fan, I'm sure you had a lot of reasons to either drink or have something to calm your nerves down a little bit. I thought Arizona State just did a great job game planning Texas. They really did. They took away Texas bread and butter run concept, which is the wide zone. Prior to the last 4 games, Texas had 70+% of its explosive runs came on that wide zone concept, and they had gotten really good, almost stubbornly efficient at it. As a matter of fact, Clemson, they ran it 23 times versus Clemson and had over 230 rushing yards just on that one concept alone. They took it away. And everybody knows you play Texas, you got to take that away. Georgia was able to take it away, and honestly, Arizona State was able to take it away. They didn't have one explosive run in that game, not one run over 10 yards, guys. And that was an Arizona State front that didn't even have a 300-pound guy on their defensive front. Everybody kept talking about the size advantage that Texas would have. So that was a little surprising. Also thought that, Eric Scatterbo backed up, every bit of the, if you want to call it trash talk of bulletin board material, say that nobody can stop him. They did a good job early on in that game. That Texas defense was just exposed because they were on the field way too much. They defended 97 plays. There were a couple of guys that got over 100 snaps in that game. And as the game wore on, Scatterbo became more effective because of their punishing running style. So just really the trenches, you thought Texas would have a huge advantage there, running the football and then able to stop the run. That was not necessarily the way it worked out, but Texas found a way to be clutch even when they weren't good.
Rod, I know that Texas fans have a complicated relationship with Quinn Ewers right now. Because he has those moments where it's like, oh, but then in clutch time, which right now is what matters, he really came through yesterday.
Yeah, he was not good. I mean, he missed a couple of easy deep balls early in the game, and the offense really just didn't have a rhythm. When they took away the run game, Texas didn't have a rhythm, and give Kenny Dillingham some credit, they just limited the amount of possessions that Texas could have offensively. So limiting possessions like that, that is a great way to stop the Sark run, as I call it, where Texas pulls away from a team, and they started really hot, but then they were able to settle down. Quinn started out the game, I think it was 130, basically 40% of his 320 something yards, whatever it was passing. I believe 40% of them came on just the 2 plays to start the game and the 2 plays to end the game. So Texas and offense really just built on explosive plays. And that's why they ended that game the way they did, just really with that explosive play factor. That was a perfect throw by Quinn on that Matthew Golden touchdown late in the game. And the tight end leak, I believe the play was called. That's a play that Texas runs a lot. The Iowa State game a couple of years ago, they ran it, and I believe on that Helm scored on that one. They ran it against Alabama with J.T. Sanders, so they liked that tight end leak play, and Sark came back to something he liked. But what I thought was interesting down the stretch, because you're right, Quinn showed up. Quinn showed he has the clutch gene, and he's got to continue to do that because it only gets tougher from here. But Sark went with what he trusted. late in the game. And that includes Quinn, by the way, because the run game, hey, it wasn't showing up for you. And basically Sark abandoned the running game down the stretch. I believe it was 15. If you look at it after the 5-minute mark in the regulation and the 2 overtimes, 15 passing attempts for Quinn Ewers. That includes a 2-point conversion. And out of those 15, I believe 9 of them were directed at Gunnar Helm and or Matthew Golden. So he was getting the ball to guys he trusted down the stretch, and those are the guys that came through for him.
Rod, as just a football lover and an X's and O's guys, getting that firsthand look at Kenny Dillingham over the last few days in preparation and then watching the game yesterday, just kind of what are your thoughts on him as a coach and the future for Arizona State and just what they do and, and their place moving forward?
I think it is. I think it's a bright future with Kenny Dillingham. Obviously, there's a part of him that knows how to motivate guys too. It's not just the X's and O's because he's known as a brilliant offensive mind, a quarterback guy, and I think Sam Levitt showed you. And I told Longhorn fans, it's the second best quarterback that in terms of playing the quarterback position and how well they're playing the quarterback position. There's nobody playing the quarterback position going into that game is what I said. Nobody playing the quarterback position better than Texas, than any of Texas opponents than Sam Levitt. Cade Klubnik was the only one that you could say was playing better because it wasn't necessarily, in my opinion, Carson Beck, even though Carson Beck has a really high ceiling as a quarterback. So Sam Levitt is a really good young quarterback as a redshirt freshman. We know what Scatterbo brings to the table. He's just a beast and a force multiplier. But what I love about Kenny Dillingham's group is he's able to get guys to overachieve, get guys to play beyond their recruiting profile, beyond what a lot of people believe is expected of them. And that's what he did with Arizona State. So I think he is a great motivator. On top of that, he did show late in the season that he was able to adjust the identity of that team. They became a power running team. They weren't a power running team at the beginning of the season, but late in the season, they started to run just gap in power schemes. They basically started abandoning a lot of their zone concepts. They wanted to get downhill, and he learned that Scatterbo was the identity, and we had to lean on him. And they did it even in that game. And he outcoached Texas. Let's be honest. I mean, they outcoached their coaches outcoached Texas, and he outcoached Sark. Texas still won the game, but he had a better game plan going in. And I think his game plan gave him a better chance to win than Texas did. Texas just leaned on their guys in clutch time, and they pulled it out. But game plan-wise, there's no doubt Kenny Dillingham did more with less.
On TexasFootball.com, Rod Babers, former defensive back, played the game with UT. All right, so 4th and 13 at overtime. They just had the false start. I did not – this is me. You played the position, so if there's a blitz, someone like you knows you have to cover even more space or you're a part of the blitz. 4th and 13, I thought Arizona State gave away too early what they were going to do. Now, Quinn gets credit for audibly out of it, but I didn't understand that and not setting up like 5 guys at the 15-yard line and make Texas pick up a first down in a different way.
Yeah, but the argument can be made that Quinn doesn't handle pressure well, right? So you got to find some way to make sure you're going to guarantee putting pressure on him in a 4th and 13 situation. So I do understand why they blitz, because that's usually when you get Quinn in, some type of duress. He's under duress and he makes a bad decision or he makes an errant throw of some kind. So I get it. What I would just give Texas credit for is picking up the blitz. They stonewalled it. I mean, he had a clean pocket to work from to make that throw, and it was a perfect throw to Matthew Golden. It was a really good play by Sark, but you needed time, and there was no guarantee that he was going to have that time. So it was a gutsy call by Sark, and it was just it was great execution. Might be the best execution all around that they had all game, other than the first 2 plays of the game where they went right down and scored a touchdown. So it was a gamble by Arizona State, but I agree with the move. I just didn't expect Texas to stonewall the blitz like they did. The DBs, the reason they're flat-footed is because they expect the ball to come out quick because they expect the pass rush to get home. They expect it's like, man, we're sending these guys. It's going to get there. If it gets there, ball's going to come out. So they were playing the sticks. All right, they were playing. Go watch the DBs. They're kind of playing like, all right, they're going to throw it somewhere around these sticks. And Texas didn't. Texas went for the gusto. And I think that surprised them a little bit, too. They planned on getting behind them rather than just trying to pick up the first down.
Yeah, those DBs got toasted too. Yeah. Like that one's gonna stick with them a bit. But Rod, they've got Ohio State coming up. Ohio State's probably playing better in the last 2 games than anybody that's left in this thing. They are on fire right now. After that Michigan game, I think Ryan Day had to come to Jesus with himself and said, we got to coach looser. We got to take some chances with these stud athletes we have. I think this is the 2 best rosters in America facing off in this game. Where does Texas have to really, really challenge them to make sure that what happened to Oregon doesn't happen to them?
Yeah, it's interesting because, this Texas defense has been stellar all season long. And I've talked about, how it's one of the greatest defenses in Texas football history. But I've also said they've been playing the regular season anyway. It's been an open book test for them because they haven't played great quarterbacks and the elite personnel. As they've gotten deeper into this postseason, we've seen, the DBs and the pass defense got a little exposed, and Cade Klubnik, best quarterback they played all year with some NFL wideouts, came out there and started dealing, right? And the front 7 hadn't really been exposed a little bit until Scatterboo, who's an NFL running back, down here running style. They were on the field for 90-something plays, got tired, and then you saw Scatterboo kind of go to work, and they were going to move the football, and Texas missing tackles, and that's just something that's uncharacteristic of the Texas defense. So it's as you get deeper into the postseason, there are more teams that can expose you, and this Ohio State can expose you unlike any other, like you said. So I think Texas is going to have to get out of their comfort zone. They play a lot of zone, matchup zone. Matchup zone basically means, you play zone coverage, you play match 4, guy comes into your zone, into your quarters, you match up on that guy basically. So it's a man zone concept. Texas plays a lot of, they don't play a lot of pure man. They're going to have to, I think, against Ohio State at times, just to put guys in the box and just to put pressure on Will Howard and to blitz him a little bit. So I think you'll see them play a little bit more man. That is something. And if you're going to do that, how do you match up with those great wide receivers they have? And Smith on the other side, got to have a plan for him. They're probably going to try to get him matched up with anybody except Jahdae Barron. Not that he can't hold his own against the Thorpe Award winner, but, work smarter, not harder, right? So they're going to attack the nickels. They're going to attack Malik Muhammad on the other side. And Texas has to have a plan for that when they do. Because if Clemson came after those 2 guys, then there's no doubt. And, of course, actually Scatterbo came after with the halfback pass on my man Muhammad. If they're going to come after him, then Ohio State's coming after him too. I would challenge Jahdae Barron like, dude, I'm at the lead. You're a Thorpe Award winner. I'm going to have to assume you don't need a lot of help when we're in bad coverage today. You're going to have to hold your own because these other guys, I got to allocate resources to help them out.
Since you were so good at what you did, would you walk up to Jeremiah Smith and say, you ain't catching a pass today on me?
I don't. Oh, that's back in my day. It is possible. I once said nobody catches the ball on my side of the field, not even me. Because I have really bad hands.
That's why you weren't a wide receiver. That's what they always say.
Yeah, man.
Who was the one player that you did regret talking trash to, if you did?
Oh, that was a good one. I talk trash to everybody. Did anybody make me pay for talking trash to them? Not necessarily. Rashawn Woods was a guy. He ended up being drafted, I think, in the first round. Big dude.
Yeah.
We battled a couple of years out there. Bethel Johnson. Anybody remember Bethel Johnson from A&M?
Oh, yeah.
I think in the second round, fast dude. I mean, he might have ran a low 4.3. He might have even cracked 4.2. I mean, dude could blaze. He once had a great line. And I don't even know if you can find it in newspapers because that was how old I am now. That he said right before the Texas A&M game, I believe he said, if Jesus couldn't even guard me if he had cleats. I took it as a personal affront as a man of God that he was blasphemous and he would throw Jesus out there. I'm like, come on, man. But I think he was just saying that Texas can't cover him either. I don't remember. I don't think he had a great game, but he was a good player. So there's a couple of guys I remember.
Young man from Corsicana, Texas, I believe. Bethel Johnson. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Rod, there's a break. They get a break. This is about something we've never seen before. We've seen teams play 2 games to play for and win a national title. We've never seen anybody have to play 3, and we're going to see possibly somebody play 4, maybe 2 teams. Can you kind of explain? There was a stat that the teams that had a first-round bye were outscored 42-3 this week in the first quarter. Does not include Georgia and also Penn State. 42-3. So maybe a layoff, a little bit of, but now everybody's going to be in the meat of playing at least once or twice. Does that make for even better games, or the possibility of attrition taking over?
That's a good question. Like the rest versus rust thing. I was thinking about that yesterday because I think it helped Arizona State. Now, Arizona State was one of the hottest teams in the country. They had won six straight games going into it. If you probably asked Kenny Dillingham in a private room, hey, would you like that time off? He'd probably like, hell no, I want to play right away because my team, we were rolling. But I think the time off helped them come up with a really good game plan for Texas. I think they came up with just a really good game plan that was grounded in who they are and the identity of the team. I don't know if they had time to come up with that good game plan if they're playing right away. So I think it kind of helped them. There's no doubt there's a rust factor with a couple of these teams too. And Texas is going to need the time off playing a double overtime game. And you see how many Texas guys out there, how many DBs were, have to take a couple of plays off. They weren't seriously hurt. I just think they were worn down. Texas had played that many plays. I think Makuba, I believe it was Jadae Barron and Makuba played over 100 snaps. And I believe Anthony Hill was right around 94 or something like that. I mean, and that's not including some of the the other, like the penalty plays, like those don't even count. Like those guys were just worn out. So I do think for some, it depends on your situation. For some teams, the rest really helps them. For other teams, the rust might come back to bite them.
Rod, the offensive line, Kelvin Banks, Cameron Williams, they're dinged. How concerned are you about the health of the offensive line?
I believe Cam Williams will make his way back. Yeah, it's concerning. Trevor Guth has played really well, guys. He came in for Kelvin Banks in the A&M game and played left tackle. Cameron Williams went out, then he switched up and was able to play right tackle. Gosh, young man is really talented. And so it's a little concerning because I wonder if some of the injuries on the O-line is what may have affected the run game. I don't want to be the guy not giving Arizona State enough credit. They had a really good game plan. They made plays. But I do wonder if Texas injuries on the O-line is also something that contributed to their subpar running performance in that matchup. They didn't even have an explosive run of over 10 yards, which is even against Georgia, guys, they had a couple of ones that they popped for over 10 yards. So that's why I hope that's not the case, but I do wonder if that may be a contributing factor. And I'll say this, in terms of pass protection, Arizona State was not a good pass rushing team, and yet they end up getting to Quinn Ewers, I bought 3 times, and they're getting 3 sacks in that game. So, going against Ohio State, I'm concerned about the O-line. I am. I can't hide that the fact that Arizona State, one of the biggest advantages was the fact that they're undersized and you have mass and girth on the O-line, and you couldn't push them around. You can't push them around. You damn sure ain't pushing Ohio State around.
Rod, great stuff, man. Thank you. Get some rest after covering the game, and then get ready for another one against Ohio State. Rod Babers, appreciate your time.
Anytime.
Thank you. Rod
Thank you.
Babers on TexasFootball.com. I tell you what, also, you think about the word patient. Arizona State was not going to run the ball well, did not run the ball well early. Scatterboo had no room to run. They tried a few wrinkles in this and that, but they didn't stop running the football. They kept going at what is their bread and butter. Now, they also had the trick play, and Leavitt was able to get some yards rushing with his great athleticism, and man, what great speed too, that I just never really saw, I guess, sometimes when I watched them. But they didn't stop doing what they did. UT could not run the ball early. They could not run the ball late. And obviously against Ohio, it's probably one of the, how many of these teams, Georgia, UT, Ohio State, and 2 or 3 others that can look in the mirror or look at their opponent and they're just as good, just as big, just as highly rated, just as talented, just as fast, and just as alpha as you are?
There's not many. It is a small, we're to it right now.
Yeah.
Right? This is where we are in the postseason. And I'll say it again. I think that this semifinal game, Texas and Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, is the 2 best rosters, and it should be because they're both probably spending as much or anybody on name, image, and likeness and roster retention and all the things that they did. They absolutely should be. They're the 2 best rosters, and this is going to come down to the game plans on either side and how can Ohio State get a running game going. Ohio State has has been explosive in these two games against Tennessee and against Oregon. Both teams are really good without their full offensive line that they won't have. I mean, center out, left tackle out. Like, they've got some great players. Donovan Jackson is maybe one of the best offensive linemen in the country, and he's played I think he's played 4 positions this year as they've moved him around. But can that Texas defensive line be the first team in the playoff to take advantage of the lack of depth? Is Kelvin Banks going to be out again? Can that? I mean, Jack Sawyer he'll play. Yeah, but I mean, like, or is he going to struggle? Like, those are the things that you have to wonder about. So
they held Oregon to minus 23 yards. A lot of those were sacks too. Craig.
Hey, Garrett, can you check your DMs real quick? There was a tweet I want to try and highlight if we can before we go here that I thought was pretty cool. But, yeah, I mean, that's going to be we've got a week and a half to talk about that game, but I do think it's going to be fantastic. And the TV executives are just absolutely licking their chops. I mean, it's absolutely what they wanted at the end of this thing, is to have big brands like Ohio State and Texas. And when you look at the recruiting rankings and you look at historical success and all those things, these are two of the top 5 or so teams of all time. You throw Alabama in there, you throw Oklahoma in there, and, maybe 1 or 2 others, Michigan obviously, but there's not many more on that list. I mean, in terms of the bluest of the blues, you're looking at 2 of them in that semifinal game now, so that'll be a lot of fun. Ohio State clicking at the right time, and Texas showing some vulnerability, but also showing that they can still find ways to win games. Outside of the Georgia losses, they're perfect, so something's got to give, and that's going to be a heck of a contest.
We're just going to have to read it, Craig. I don't have time to make a graphic.
Okay, that's fine. But I did want to make mention in regards to Arizona State. Cool to see Deion Sanders with the tweet yesterday saying to Kenny Dillingham, "You represented all of us from the Big 12 well, my brother. We are proud of you and your team. God bless you all. You're awesome coach of the year." So that was Coach Prime on Twitter yesterday. And just giving a shout-out to Dillingham and the Sun Devils, and I thought that was great to see. And just cool to see the respect shown, but also cool to see, like, dude, if you look at the Big 12 and some of the personalities and the coaches and the players, like, this was a damn good year, man. You wish you would have had a playoff win. You wish you would have had a team win a national championship. But what Arizona State did in terms of their emergence, Deion and company had a really solid year. BYU, obviously, Baylor's resurgence, just so on and so forth. I think the Heisman Trophy winner, there's a lot of cool things, and I think you start to look at next year, and you look at Deion, but post Shador and Travis Hunter. You look at Kenny Dillingham and Sam Levitt running it back, and all the other storylines that are in play. It's a really fun league with some fun personalities. Absolutely. And cool to see a couple of them acknowledging each other and showing that respect, especially after such a hard-fought game where they did put on for not only that university but for the league. And I don't think that's always necessarily deserving of being a thing, but I do think when you're talking the playoff and the sport and the health of it as a whole, it is important to have some conversation and some good things happening in the league, and so Deion and Kenny Dillingham are definitely a big part of that.
Hey, Arizona State, like, the thing about the league, I think if people decided they weren't going to watch the Big 12, I mean, look, Desmond Howard kind of got burned on that Kansas State-Arizona State thing. Yeah. And part of it is like it had this perception. Arizona State is not the one bid out of the Big 12 because they coasted to this. It was a slog.
They didn't get in until the very last moment, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they did not get in until the last time that they could. Like, they weren't in it. This was a fight, and it was a fight because the league is good. The league is really good. There are arguably, I mean, you guys talked about it earlier a little bit, the depth of quarterback in the Big 12 is better 1 to 16, I think, than any league in the country right now. And especially when you've got Houston adding Connor Wegman, like, you've got some good quarterbacks in the league, which everybody aspires to. They've got a really, really good Caden Salter's going to Colorado. I think that's probably going to work out pretty well, given his skill set and what their offense is. Now, they're going to run the ball better, but, man, it's good. BYU absolutely drumming Colorado. It was not, to me, an indication of the Big 12, just about how things can go any kind of given week.
The one thing about Arizona State's run to get to where they were yesterday afternoon, they had to beat BYU, they had to beat Iowa State, they had to grind. They beat Arizona, of course, in a rivalry game. They had to grind, And that's also the 4 games that Scadaboo had with the 143 yards yesterday as the least of the yardage he was. It was a great run. And I brought up that quarterback thing because I don't get it, the depth charts like you guys do, but I started thinking, my God, they've got a lot of talent at quarterback and experience coming back.
Well, I should say Kenny Dillingham probably deserved to, if he hadn't already, sent Dion a thank you card for helping them get into the championship game.
Yeah, no, they did, yeah.
So, there was that part of it that wasn't so fun for the Buffs, but cool move by Dion there to congratulate them because they definitely represented themselves. And, as a byproduct, everybody else in the league, I think, represented them very well at the same time. So, I think those are 2 teams you look at as both being very interesting situations heading into next season. And I don't think you'll have as much of an issue in terms of the preseason kind of ignorance, but more so attention being paid, because a big part of kind of what bit you this year was that nobody expected BYU to be that good, right out of the gates. And then they were, and they're like, oh, damn, where do we put them? And nobody expected Arizona State to be as good as they were. And you've got some other examples as well. But I know now next year you will expect Arizona State to be very good. You will have more respect on Colorado's name, even though it might not show in the preseason poll because of who they lose. But you know that it's not just a flash in the pan necessarily. And I think there's a lot of situations like that where there will be some very fun storylines. But, between the Heisman Trophy winner and Cam Scadaboo in the playoff, and I just think there was a lot of great moments that you can reflect on. You obviously at some point can't just be the runner-up and the cute runner-up that just gets the respect. You got to go and win those games eventually, and that was a massive missed opportunity. For as much as we're pumping up the positivity, that was a massive missed opportunity. Kenny Dillingham probably did not sleep at all last night, but still, it was a good showing. And next time, if it's the Sun Devils or if it's somebody else, you just got to make sure you don't let more wasted opportunities go by. You've got to eventually take advantage of those.
I got a couple of things to get to. Do you know that whoever loses between Ohio State and Texas, Baylor doesn't deserve to be in this conversation, between Ohio State and Texas will meet that same team to start the 2025 season.
Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten about that. This is one of the benefits of this.
I think it's in Columbus, too. That's one thing, Texas, they have it, and there's others, but playing at Michigan in Ann Arbor, a team that won the national title, Ohio State in Columbus, I believe. That'll be fun. That'll be brought up a few times, too.
You know what I'll tell you about Texas as an organization? This is an absolute compliment, that when other schools or other places are kind of behind an argument, they have seemingly thought it out before you have. When people can say, oh, the scheduling's terrible. Texas is man, we're playing Michigan and Ohio State and Notre Dame. We take LSU. We let Joe Burrow come here, for God's sakes. What are you saying about us? So, they can insulate themselves from about 80% of the arguments most of the time because for whatever reason, they're ahead out of it. Now, part of it is because they are so ridiculously powerful, they can do those things. Now, sometimes their PR machine is just better than everybody else's.
Yeah, but they also caught a break with who they were, and it's fine because they took advantage of it when the NIL and transfer portal. It allowed them to get some of the great players. But you know what? They did. The ones they got, most of them hit. Not all of them, but most of them hit. Matthew Golden, Quinn Ewers, who sometimes we forget is a transfer.
Fair to say Ohio State's transfer is also very much hit.
Absolutely, the starting quarterback among the defensive back, no question. That game's on August 30th next year, the first week in Columbus, Texas at Ohio State. So they're going to play back-to-back. The winner will play somebody else in the championship game, whoever that might be. All right, when we come back, Gary, did you get my text? I got to do Alan Samuels here. Okay, when we come back, we'll wrap it up. Also, Paul's top 5 around the corner. This is 365 Sports. This is the last day. I just received this from Ted Teague at Alan Samuels in Waco. To save up to $15,000 and get 3.9% financing for 72 months on the stock of 2024 Jeep Wagoneer Series 3. Last day for 0.9% financing for 72 months on the stock of 2024 Ram 1500s. Last day to take advantage of 2.9% financing for 72 months on the in-stock 2024 Dodge Hornet GT and the GT Plus. last day to take advantage of 2.9% financing for 72 months or get 10% off MSRP on the stock or in-stock 2024 Jeep Gladiators. 2 more of these to give you. Last day, up to $10,000 off in the stock, what's in stock of the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited, a phenomenal SUV, and the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee L Limited. And the last day of up to $15,000 off the in-stock 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited 4xE and 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland. All of those available while they're open still today. When they are open until this evening, Ted Teague, the general manager, David Gray, he's the one in charge of new car sales at Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
It's time to start something new at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive into 2025 with incredible deals on our full lineup of Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram vehicles. Whether you're conquering the trails in a Jeep Grand Cherokee, towing in style with a Ram Heavy Duty, or cruising the city in a sporty and luxurious Ram 1500, we've got the perfect ride for you. Come see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco, where we make buying cars easy. Allen Samuels, your friend in the car business.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
We did 365 Sports live from the Hilton at Post Oak in Houston on Monday afternoon. I know you may not be able to see this, but this was where we were broadcasting from. A lot of those of you who were there to cover or watch and enjoy the Texas Bowl between Baylor and LSU. We appreciate all of you who dropped by. I just wanted to put up that picture because we took a few of them with those. Great to see Keith Starr, who I've known forever, out of Tyler, who had a heart attack. Garrett, what did he say?
Said he died on the table.
He died on the table, made it back, thank goodness. And he was there with his son Reagan, Mike Dewey. He does an amazing job of setting up a lot of the on-the-road type tailgating and events. And Mario and his son Raymond. Mario, a U.S. Army vet. And I know I'm not trying to forget everything because there were other that do, of those of you who dropped by, we appreciate the support where we were in Houston, including the Hilton Post Oak. Okay, to wrap it up, Paul's Top 5 is around the corner. To wrap up everything up until right now, you got a final thing to say or two, Paul?
We haven't talked too much about Ohio State and Oregon. Look, I might have been part of the lunatic fringe a little bit on Ryan Day. I have to admit that. But, I mean, I do think it was fair to question, like, how much the fans love him in spite of the fact that he's now 68-10 as their head coach because he's lost to Michigan 3 times and hasn't won the national title yet. But they're playing really awesome. And Jeremiah Smith, is maybe the best true freshman I've ever seen in my life. At least at wide receiver. He's probably, to me, might be the Adrian Peterson of wide receivers. Like that kind of ability, and his, kind of deciding, hey, we need to find this guy more often. And yeah, I'm just wildly impressed with Ohio State. It doesn't make me like Ryan Day anymore because of his personality, but I do think that maybe some people need to, back up off him a little bit.
Yeah, the worst part about that was that it allowed Kirk Herbstreit to be like totally right about something because he and others who pointed out kind of the absurdity of Ohio State fans' lunacy did have a point, I felt like. But you also did understand the other side of it of, like, you got to beat Michigan, and it's very important, and you got to win national titles over a certain span or people lose their minds. But what a vindication for Ryan Day up until this point. Now, that can obviously change real quick. You turn around and you get blown out in the semifinals or something. But right now, he's sleeping good, and he's feeling good, I think, about where that team is. That was mightily impressive. I know what you're saying about Smith and the kind of alpha comparisons that he can draw upon to the all-time comparisons. I do think he's sort of a one-of-one type of a guy that we're seeing right now as a true freshman that's just ultra special and could be in that conversation about guys who just go from high school to the pros or guys who jump from like just 1 year in college and are already ready for the pros. I think he's a guy that's in that conversation, and there'll be a handful for Texas. They've got obviously a lot of time to prepare and vice versa, so I know we'll cover that game. But, yeah, that was initially just leaving me with the feeling that I probably feel like a lot of other people had, which is like, hey, did Oregon deserve to be in the playoff? Like, that's how this works, right? Mm-hmm. I know it's just that's what everybody's probably making the same joke, but how do you not? Because of all the hand-wringing over the first week and the seedings and who deserved it and who didn't. And then here you have a team who's the only undefeated, and they're getting, their doors blown off here in this matchup. So that was very interesting to see that. And then they got a little bit of the respectability back when they kind of clawed back into it. Not into it as terms of threatening to take the lead or anything, but at least making it look a little bit better than it was. But, yeah, that was an ass-kicking, and very impressed with the Buckeyes. They're red hot right now.
All right, I saw this from theathletic.com. They do a morning kind of an overview. The guy, we've had him on. They do a great job of kind of summarizing things, but not with too many words. Heading into the thing, Craig, you mentioned Oregon was number one. They got shoved around and dominated by Ohio State. Here's a note, though. Ohio State would not have been in the 14 playoff. And they wouldn't have been in the previous two-team college football championship game either. And there's a chance the two-team model would have excluded Texas from being in it based on how it used to work. And both of them had massive wins to get to the semifinals with what they did on Wednesday. So there's a thought about what this 12-team playoff brought into play. Yes, they're both maybe have a little extra something to them because of their name, the conference, whatever, but they've earned it, and they would have been left out of a 4-team or the previous 2-team BCS championship game.
But I had to watch a blowout. There's too many blowouts. No, like, how about the fact that, you wouldn't even have had maybe the two best teams that are playing right now even in this thing in previous incarnations. And I understand there's room for complaints about the playoff, and there's things that need to be fixed, like maybe the seeding and the home sites and all of that. But, yeah, that's a prime example of why it's maybe you don't need 12, but there are years where you need more than 2 or you need more than 4, and I think that's definitely one of those years when you look at it, and there was only the one unbeaten, and that unbeaten just got smoked and didn't even make it to the Final Four. So it's a different era. I don't think this is just black and white. Like, this is just like it was in the 90s, and like the rules are different, the rosters are different, a lot of things are different. And so the playoff is different, and I think it's a hard pill to swallow when you do see a lot of lopsided outcomes. And look, one of the two yesterday was a lopsided outcome, but that Arizona State-Texas game delivered, and I think that was a prime example of why there are some benefits to having the expanded field because, we wouldn't be talking about either one of those teams in previous years necessarily.
All right, so Garrett Ross, thank you. Jack McKenzie was here earlier too. Thanks to those of you who jumped in once we got on early. Paul will do, in fact, triple option coming up at 1 today. Don't forget tonight at 10:30, the local show, the local CW 365 Sports Tonight with some of the best discussions today and also our guest from today, too. Thank you, all of you. Happy New Year. We're back tomorrow at 3. This is 365 Sports, and good night.
So-So Pizza from So-So's Pizza.
But wait, there's Marco.
Oh, wow.
Our new triple
You didn't
pepperoni
have to do it.
Magnifico pizza is stacked with classic, crispy cupped, and new bold shredded pepperoni. It's triple the flavor and only at Marco's. Just $11.99.
There are hundreds of things that can affect our sleep, but what's affecting yours? Sleep Doctor's home sleep test brings the precision of a sleep lab into the comfort of home to help you get answers and unlock a lifetime of great sleep. Start now at sleepdoctor.com/TV.
Just got all the credit cards and stuff like that. And it was just right when I had everything else on the list. I mean, like, it's the CVV codes and all that stuff. So.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5. I know, it's been a long time. The first one of 2025. And you'll remember it always, I'm sure. And we're brought to you by Texas Beef House. Go to bidonbeef.com and always use our promo code 365sports. We're going through some New Year's resolutions, people. That's what we're doing here on January 2nd. So, for Oregon, earn membership into the country club. Oh, poor Oregon. You and your blonde dreadlock white dudes. Once again, knocking at the door of being an elite program and just being on the outside after Ohio State rolled the crap out of you. And we were all behind you. Oregon, we really were. Thought this would have been the year. Look, you've got America's coach in Dan Lanning. One day you'll do it. But right now, all the Nike money in the world has not meant a thing when it comes to finally breaking down the door and winning in the postseason when it matters. That's the thing that sucks for Oregon fans. You do everything that all the Blue Bloods do, yet you're not one yet because you have not won that elusive national title. And I know it's painful. I know it hurts. But if you just keep doing what you're doing and keep asking Phil Knight for more money, I'm sure it'll come around. This is your lose 50 pounds. This is your New Year's resolution, okay? Get into that country club. Quit standing outside. They want you in. They're like, hey, that would be great, but rules are rules. You can't be in the country club until you win a national title. Hadn't happened yet. Number 4, Kirk Herbstreit. Quit being the SEC's flag waver. Look, he was one of the best, and he's still a really great commentator. I don't want to completely rain on Kirk Herbstreit here because that would be mean. But what we saw after the Indiana game and his refusal to comment on Tennessee getting stomped, the fact that Arizona State had Texas beat, all of these things. The hypocrisy when it comes to Gunnar Stockton versus FSU backups, it's all wonky and upside down. He used to be one of the great commentators in college football and a real fan of college football. But since the expansion of the playoffs, something I don't think he was ever in favor of, plus The more he's done games, the more he wants to see good games. And he's doing NFL games and college games every week. And I get that when you're in the booth, because I've been there, not on the high levels, but Smokey and Craig and I did games together for a very long time. You do get a little bit jaded when it comes to watching blowout games. It's tough. I get it. But things are changing in college football. Parity is here. And look, it is not about conference versus conference. It's about the brands versus the non-brands. Because when we look at what we have left in college football right now in the postseason, it is all brands. It's Notre Dame, it's Penn State, it's Ohio State, it's Texas, it's Georgia, and it's Notre Dame as of today. That's what's going on. It's brands versus non-brands. It's not league versus league. That is not what's happening. So you have to look at it in a different way. So, be a flag waver for college football and not just for the SEC. Number 3, Mario Cristobal, be more open. Look, this Cam Ward scenario, all kind of weird. If the plan was to see Emory Williams all along, that's fine. You can say that. But you also don't want to say that out loud because it means you're telling your fans that even though we all know that post-game exhibitions aren't that big of a deal, that you came and bought a ticket and came here and we hyped you up, but we weren't trying that hard to win the game. And I can tell you what they know about Emory Williams. They know everything they need to know about him. Otherwise, Cam Ward would never have been there. Also, Mario Cristobal kind of got exposed for what Miami was in that second half. It was Cam Ward and people that Cam Ward were carrying. Now, look, I'm not saying that they didn't have some stud players. Both running backs, fantastic. Wide receivers, fantastic. Great offensive line. But all that doesn't matter if the signal caller is really, really bad. Cam Ward elevated them to another level. If they're not careful, they're going to wind up being this next year's FSU, which is a fate I wouldn't even wish on Miami. That's how much it sucks. That's how bad that was. Be more open. Be more honest. Don't just be a meathead jock. You can be better, Mario. I believe in you. This is your quitting smoking. Be more open. Be honest with yourself and with the fans. It's better. Number 2, Greg Sankey. Stop being so imperialistic. It makes you look like a douche. We've got a great thing going in college football. I know everybody's like freaking out about things. The first run of the 12-team college football playoff, I think, has been an absolute home run. Yeah, there's blowouts. There were blowouts before. Yeah, maybe you need to change the seeding and tweak some things, but 12 teams seems pretty freaking awesome. And if you just focus on making your league the best it can be without that coming at the expense of others, then I think things will be better. So focus more on college football. You and Kirk Herbstreit, the next time that you guys are out to a very intimate dinner, can talk about this. Maybe we should pull back. Maybe we should be nicer. Maybe we should open our arms to the betterment of college football and not just the advancement of one little section of it. And number 1, Ohio State fans, learn to love losing only 2 games a year. It's not that bad. Most teams do it way more. A bad year for you is 10-2, and maybe you lose to Michigan. There's the 12-team playoff. Right now, everybody's probably picking you to win the whole thing. Guess what the Michigan game means if you win the whole thing? Diddly squat. It doesn't mean anything. You've got a coach that if he wins out, these next 2 games will be 70-10. Do you know what most schools would do to be 70-10 over an 80-game stretch? It's not legal. It's not legal what they would do. It is bad. They would be bad for most schools to say, hey, you can be 70-10. Appreciate what you have and the fact that you're the most consistent college football program in the country. Yeah, you haven't had that national title in 10 years. Well, guess what? You could be Minnesota and be the most dominant team of the 1930s. And now it doesn't matter. So appreciate what you have. Be grateful. I know Ryan Day's tough to love. His wife probably feels the same way. But he's about to be close to 70-10, if not 70-10, the way they're playing right now. So sometimes you got to take the bad with the good. So Ohio State fans, be more appreciative of what you have and not so greedy. Maybe there's a theme here in this top 5. That's going to do it for today's top 5. We will see you later.